Hello, folks, and welcome to Kaizen Institute's webinar series. Tonight's webinar is going to be on Kaizen Energy, the four pillars of health, happiness, and motivation. It's a joint presentation of Kaizen Institute North America and our friends Kaizen Institute Western Europe. Tonight's presenter is going to be Jesse Martin. Jesse's a managing senior consultant with us in Kaizen Institute USA. And he's going to take us through our presentation this evening, and he'll also be hanging on at the end of the presentation to take on any questions that may arise. For those of you who just joined us, if you mouse over the middle of your presentation, a dashboard will show up. And on that dashboard, you should see an icon that talks about a Q&A. If you open up that board, you'll see the meeting chat, and you'll be able to type in questions if you have any as Jesse goes through the presentation. So feel free to do that. And without further delay, I'm happy to present Jesse Martin. Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for taking time out of your evening and joining us here at Kaizen Institute North America for a really special presentation. This is actually the first time that we've delivered, other than this afternoon. We did deliver this one other time today, but this is the first time we've chosen to show an internal program that we developed for our consulting team on the global stage. So this was with a great deal of partnership that all of this came together. And I'll start off by offering some appreciation to our colleagues at Kaizen Institute Western Europe, and specifically the managing senior partner for Kaizen Institute Western Europe, Euclides, who was instrumental in both the development of this program as well as also making sure that that we were able to present this on this stage and deliver this information. Kind of the background on this program is it was really developed for the purpose of preparing our consultants to lead a extremely busy lifestyle and schedule. You know, if you're familiar with Kaizen Institute and the work that we do, we work in every segment of the economy in the world, out of 60 plus global offices, and we work with any industry imaginable. And really that takes a great deal of effort from our consultants because we're a pretty small group at the global level. And we found pretty early on that we needed to make a program that also prepared our teams to go out and function at this high level. And through that need came the Kaizen Energy program. And tonight we're going to look at the four pillars of health, happiness, and motivation. And it's beyond just something that is something we promote. It's something that we actually live at many levels of our business. So again, really appreciate everyone being here, and let's get started. So for those who may be a little bit new to Kaizen Institute, Kaizen, our mission is really simple, if not really bold at the same time. Our focus is to improve the world with everyone, everywhere, every day. And we really genuinely mean that. We feel that our purpose and our goal in life is, whether it's in business or something like this, more in our personal lives, this is about us being a little bit better today than we were. And really the origin of this starts with where our name comes from. Kaizen, as you might imagine, sounds like a more Asian background, and it is. It is a very common phrase that is culturally very normal in Japan. In fact, the word Kaizen is seen in the rest of the world kind of as a business and industry, if not manufacturing term about process improvement or methodologies for problem solving. But in reality, the concept of Kaizen is a cultural element of Japanese culture, and it becomes part of a student's life. Around the age that you're in fifth grade or so, that your teacher might start interacting with you, just the same as they might say, time to clean up, time to wash hands or get ready. They might say to their students, let's Kaizen, let's make our classroom better. So it's a word that means a lot of things, right? And it's appropriate that this is the foundations of our company name. Kaizen became this manufacturing word with our founder, Masaki Imai, and as he wrote his books in the 1980s surrounding process improvement and using these Japanese concepts that he observed in business and industry in Japan, he saw the application of Kaizen culture in a different way than it had previously been put together. The really interesting part about Kaizen is that it is the formation of two words that separately explain exactly what we are all about. So the fun fact on the screen in front of you now is the characters that are in front of you. They are not Japanese characters. These are Chinese characters that are used in Japanese language. And the top symbol represents Kai, and that is to change. And the bottom symbol represents Zen, or for the better. Zen is probably the one that people are the most familiar with. We hear that sometimes in society a lot, but I'll explain first Kai. So Kai means to change, and part of the element that's there, the Chinese character representing the word Kai, you have to use your imagination a little bit, but this represents, and some say that it represents someone whipping themselves across the back, right? Because to change, we have to be willing to become a little bit uncomfortable, and we have to be willing to have self-discipline to push ourselves to change and develop into something new and better. And at the bottom, Zen, for the better. This is how we improve our life, our way of doing business, right? It's about sustaining, right? And to sustain a change, and when we've put the effort into self-discipline to make ourselves better, the Zen part is sustaining it through time. And we know that to sustain anything throughout time, we have to be willing to sacrifice. So the other interpretation of the other character here is that this is a very roughly sketched altar with an animal on top being sacrificed, right? Because it takes great sacrifice to sustain the change, that discipline and a willingness to be better. It takes sacrifice to keep that as part of your culture. So how we see it and use it is when these two characters come together and we bring these two words, Kai and Zen, together, and we have Kaizen. Together, this represents a completely separate thing. It represents continuous improvement, right? So we know that a willingness to change, a willingness to undergo some discomfort and discipline ourselves, and then a willingness to sacrifice things for the greater good, together, this is the key elements of continuous improvement. So when you look back to that cultural element, both internally and externally, how we work here at Kaizen, it makes so much sense, right? It's all about sustaining a continuous improvement culture. So we don't talk about going in and doing a workshop and we, fix everything, right? We walk teams through changing and developing their culture, right? To be a culture that focuses on making things better. So this is a really exciting presentation to offer on a couple levels. One, because it is new. Two, because it's on health and wellness at the interpersonal level. And three, because I have spent about the last 5 to 6 months also walking the Kaizen Energy path and focusing in on my own improvement. And this is a quote that I came back to many times, and I wanted to share it with you because it's something that I focused on when I was having some difficulty motivating myself to sustain the change that I was looking for. And it says, unwillingness to change is a promise that tomorrow will be exactly the same. And I think I could speak for myself and many of my peers that this is the most frustrating mindset as a consultant that we tend to run into. It's a company's unwillingness, or a leader's unwillingness, or an individual's unwillingness to change, but having the expectation that something is going to be different tomorrow. Something would be better tomorrow. The reality is it's just simply not going to. An unwillingness to change is a promise that tomorrow will be exactly the same. And that's the perfect bridge into how I wanted to start this by sharing where I've gone with this and why I feel so much of my own energy toward this program. And that's been really my journey, right? At some point, 6 to 8 months ago, after some major life changes and I just wasn't feeling myself, kind of off kilter, not feeling the energy that I know, I had in there. And I kind of started to look at other alternatives. Maybe it's, I need to exercise more, join a gym, or, just the typical things your mind goes to when you feel like you need to get better, right? Do something different. And then I realized, right, that even doing some small things like that, I wasn't really going to change my culture. And what I wanted to do and what I wanted to commit to was truly an interpersonal commitment to, I might not be perfect today, and I'm not going to be perfect tomorrow, but I will be better tomorrow than I am today, right? I hope you're on the better webinar, right? So I already gave this once today, so I should be incrementally better now. So lucky you, right? So it was applying that Kaizen concept to my life. So like I said, it's practicing what I preach, right? And honestly, I can really recall the moment that I was sitting in a hotel room, and it occurred to me that I needed to take a spoonful of my own medicine, and the things that I was going out during the day and asking of the teams who I was working with, I needed to apply that same approach inward. And here we are, 3 months into a heavy amount of commitment into these things, and I've shaved a couple minutes off my mile time. I've been on a pescatarian diet, which I didn't even know I was on until it was a month in, and then I realized what I had kind of done, and I feel great. I have also lost about 25 pounds, right? And it's not a snake oil thing, right? It was intentional improvement that I planned and committed to, and then just followed my own methodologies. So it's just an exciting concept. So the Kaizen Energy model is a bit different, right? So when we look at the business sector, one of the things that we'll often say is that an organizational's productivity and the amount of time or available energy in an organization are the two key elements to how much they can do. So organizational energy is the sum of all the energy of the people in the organization, and that tells us how much productivity capacity they have. For life success, slightly different. For this, we're looking at our capacity to do these tasks, our capacity to go out and work an 8-hour day or a 10-hour day, right? And then what the actual demand is on us, right? So there's 2 lines here to pay attention to on the graph on the right. And the first is that capacity line. It's kind of that orange color, right? And our capacity, it goes up, and we see that it kind of peaks about age 30, and then it's a pretty significant decline on the way down there, right? As our capacity diminishes over time, because maybe we've not cared for ourselves. But those that are in their 30s, right? Might feel a sense of it's becoming more difficult, right? And eventually, as the graph goes along, you see that demand intersects with capacity, and this is where you commonly find around age 50 to 60 this midlife crisis. Big life changes, and you feel like demands far exceeding your ability to survive in that environment, etc. And then enters the Kaizen model, right? The Kaizen energy model of conserving and changing the paradigm of how we live and work and care for ourselves. And the objective here is to build a model that levels it, so you don't experience a decline in your ability to do the capacity that you want to do. Euclides was on the call earlier today and was able to share, as someone in his 60s, right? That he still has the energy there, but he made a commitment a decade ago to start living and doing things differently, applying these cultural changes to all aspects and elements of his life. And this is a a critical piece, right? This cultural part of how our employees feel, because it impacts the way that they work in our organization. So for instance, if we look at the United States, we have just shy of 20% of our workforce is actively disengaged, right? So this means there's a significant difference between partially disengaged and actively disengaged. An actively disengaged employee is someone who is intentionally, right, maybe setting things back or being a roadblock, right? The partially engaged is maybe someone that's a little laissez-faire, not necessarily happy to be at work, not necessarily looking for another job. They're just there, they're checking the box, right? And this is where we, in almost every country, we find a majority of the workforce. But then our actively engaged, these are the people driving our companies forward. But this means that they're expelling energy in their personal lives, right? In our work environment, or we're maybe taking more out of them than really, you know, we should, or they're giving us more and not getting the balance that they need. And you see, you know, across the board, this is if we're looking at other countries, like this is not something that's just unique to the United States. This is everywhere. And the problem is that the fully engaged employee are the ones that are the most successful in building our organizations. But to be physically available, right, to be ready to serve our companies, to be ready to drive our culture, they have to be physically energized, right? They have to be emotionally connected, both at home and at work. They have to be mentally focused, again, at home, at work, and spiritually aligned. It's critical that they know why they're doing what they're doing, right? If we don't know why we go to work, or the answer is just a paycheck, right? This isn't sustainable. We're already partially engaged if we're here to check a box, right? So a fully engaged organization, you have to be aligned with the mission of your organization. And the key concept here is that every thought, every emotion, every behavior has an energy consequence, for better or for worse. And the easiest example to think of is simply in traffic, right? If you've ever been having that great day and someone cuts you off in traffic and you say, oh, no worries, right? And you go on about your day, right? This has had no consequence on your day. At the same time, someone cuts you off and you get angry, right? That energy comes with you, right? So it doesn't go away. You don't immediately go back to feeling calm. You've made the commitment to be angry, and now you're already on that track. So it's important to consider this as we move through the rest of this presentation, because it's a really big focus area overall. So the Kaizen Energy model is somewhat based like our Kaizen business model, right? So, but the Kaizen business model talks and looks and focuses on the outer game, right? Building and developing business, right? We have world-class tools and systems and standards, right, to promote business growth and sustainability through time. Kaizen Energy, this is the bridge over to our inner game, right? Again, developed internally to make sure that we were caring for our consultants and that they were keeping that balance and having happy, healthy lives so that they could perform as they need to while delivering our Kaizen business model. So when we approached this, we knew that it needed to have world-class motivation, energy, and habits, right? And when you have these world-class tools, this allows us to have performance, higher performance, better flow, more success, and ultimately happiness, right? It's hard to sustain happiness in a cycle of failure, right? It's hard to sustain happiness if you are constantly struggling with your flow, or you feel like you're underperforming or unable to keep up, right? You know, to have a world-class system, all of these things have to be combined, and we'll look at this a little more. So if we look at the things that are really critical to this concept, it's that we have to have challenge, right? If we don't have challenge, we aren't going to have the growth that we need, right? As leaders, as folks in our homes and communities, we have to be challenged, or there isn't really a reason to grow and change, right? And the other thing that we have to take into consideration is our level of boredom, right? Our skill level. The better that we get at things, the less challenging it becomes, and then we are really skilled and not really being challenged. But on the same side, right? If we're not so skilled and we have a high challenge or a big challenge in front of us, this can create anxiety. But this isn't always bad, right? Because through the anxiety comes growth. And when we think about this, right? Now is the perfect time to be considering this. We're at this moment in time where we've really, all of us have been challenged. Our work environments have changed. The way we do business has changed. And with this, it happened so quickly and skills were so low, right? That we had this high level of anxiety. Not only were we dealing with something that was shown as a global challenge that we weren't sure we were going to overcome, it was also something that was new to business and industry, and how we were going to react and how our employees were going to respond to this. So what we do, right, is we leverage this in our more normal working environments, right? I know a few people now that have gotten into the routine of the new home office, and there are folks that really like a big challenge and like to change things, and now 4 and 5 weeks into this, they're bored. They've developed their skill set and their routines. They're getting their work done, and they're ready to go back and rebuild and see this next phase come through. So the thing to keep in mind here is not to shy away from this challenge, because this is what's going to build our skill over time. It's finding that flow channel kind of in the middle where we can be happy, and we can be increasing our skills, we can be increasing our challenges, and we can be, decreasing the difficulty of working in that environment, right? It's kind of finding our spot in the middle of all of this where we're comfortable and focused in and on our growth. And this isn't necessarily just a diet and exercise thing or anything like this. This is also the way that we think, and challenging ourselves to think differently and focus on new paradigms, right? So I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't. So I guess nod in disapproval if I'm wrong, right? But the paradigm that we live in when it comes to health and wellness is really that we manage our time. This is the current state, the state that maybe you're living in now. We manage our time. We try to avoid stress. We say things like, life is a marathon. We have to endure through the hard times. Downtime in life. You never want to waste a moment. You don't want any downtime. Like live every second like it was your last. Performance is rewarded. A good example of this is, if you're the sales guy that's on this webinar, you probably promise yourselves things, right? Like, if I do this, if I get the sale, I'll get myself a new watch. My colleague that's on here, he if we do well, maybe he'll get AirPods. I know he's been excited for those, right? Like we promise ourselves a reward to push ourselves to perform. That's the current state. That's how we tend to live, right? And what do we do with failure? We punish ourselves for failure. We come down on ourselves. We come down on our colleagues, our friends and family. We feel like, we failed at this, so we have to discipline ourselves and take some of that on. That's the only way we'll improve, right? And then we say silly things like positive thoughts. That's what gets you through. If we stay positive, right? But we look at it with the Kaizen Energy model a little bit differently. So we say that we don't manage time, because time is finite, right? It's the same 24 hours every day. We manage our energy, our available energy for our own personal organization, us as the human, right? We manage our energy and how we expend and bring that energy back into ourselves. We don't avoid stress. We seek out pressure. We find ways to stress our environment to make ourselves grow. We see life not as a marathon, and it's not endurance. If you're running a marathon, consider for just a moment that there's only one outcome, and there's only one opportunity to win or lose, right? And in life, I like to think of it a lot more like a series of sprints, right? I may lose quite a lot of sprints, right? But, you know, statistically, it's on my side. The more I run, I get better at sprinting, these small bursts of energy to get through a challenging task. And as we go through time, I will lose less sprints because I'm getting better at it. And so, you know, really it's the long game is about winning more than you lose, right? But it's short bursts. It's not endurance. We shouldn't have to endure life, right? We endure and push ourselves in moments. And then we look at downtime quite differently in the Kaizen Energy model than we look at it in a factory walk. Downtime is critically important. It provides productivity. It allows us to take a moment for ourselves and align ourselves and collect our thoughts and build plans and connect with ourselves on a lot of different levels. So downtime isn't just something you should do. It's critical. Without downtime, the rest of the system doesn't work. And then performance is driven by purpose. This one's a really powerful and important one, right? Consider for a moment that if your performance is based on reward, you're pushing yourself to be rewarded for your performance. It may be that you're not driven by the process that you're serving, right? So where we want to shift is you should find yourself in roles and doing things that you perform at a high level because that's what you're passionate about and that's what you love to do. That's really the key harmony, right, that can exist in life and in a career is when your performance is driven by the purpose that you serve. You know, not to sound too nerdy, right, but I sometimes can't believe that I get paid to do what I do because I really genuinely love what we do with our clients, right? We get to go in and help and make something better, and that's my life, you know, every week, and it's so crazy to consider like that's what I do, and that's why it's so much fun, and I don't have to put a reward out in front of me to make me want to do that, right? And then routines are that other critical component in here. Routines have to be prioritized, right? So this is a routine as simple as if we say, you know what, we're not going to sleep the afternoon away on a Saturday. We are going to get up at 9, or if you have the kiddos, right, the kids are going to go to bed at 8:30 during the week. It's building times and sleep schedules and meals and quality time for yourself and your family and your friends, building in a routine into your life that works, that's logical, that's not time consuming, right? This isn't the January 1st, everybody goes to the gym and, you know, you're going to run 4 miles a day and like, you know, 4 minutes into your first mile, you're like, yeah, I'm probably not going to do that, right? This is building something sustainable that's easy, that incremental improvement, 1% better tomorrow than we were today, right? And then my last one is one that I hold really dear to my heart because it's something that I've not always been very good at and has been a primary focus area for me, and that's being fully present. And we see that as something that drives progress in our careers, in our personal lives. It's being fully present in the moment that we're in. So for right now, right, we have all you lovely attendees to our webinar, and I am genuinely not thinking about anything else right now except you, right? My mind is here at the tiny dot on top of my computer screen where I hope that you're getting some information out of this that's beneficial to you, right? And I have committed to myself and been doing well at making that a priority also in my personal life. You know, when we're with friends, when we're with family, not putting the phone upside down on the table, literally not having your phone out, leaving it in the car, right? Pretending you're in the 90s and somebody can call you on a landline, if anybody has those anymore, right? If they really need you, you know, being genuinely present in the moment is just this critical piece that gives you so much more connection with the people and the activities in your life. Just to stop and observe where you're at right now, right? I always like to say that the future doesn't really exist, right? It's theory, and the past is already pretty much locked in, right? So the only reality is the second that we're in right now and the second that we're about to be in, right? That's the only two realities that really exist. But we put a lot of focus and energy out into all these things that are kind of out of our control. So if we just focus in and we come together, we might have better results. So the four pillars that we're going to talk about, the four principles of Kaizen Energy, look at four very different but very important things, right? The recovery science, building habits, sources of energy, where we pull energy from and how we use that energy, and then pressure tests, right? How do we push ourselves to be better? How do we develop those routines? And so we'll look at each of these in detail, right? So this is our first principle, the source of energy, right? So there are four levels here, right? We have our physical energy, and this is how we engage our body, right? So our physical energy, right? It's about that quantity metric, right? It's how much we can endure. That's my mile time, right? This is how much I can push myself to make my body better, right? The next level of energy, though, is a critical component to really sustaining that growth of quantity of how much I can engage my body, and that's where I am emotionally. So it's the quality of our emotions and how in control we feel or don't feel of our emotions that allow us to really understand where that energy goes. So it's how we engage our heart. Do we feel emotionally connected and happy with the things that we're doing, right? If we don't feel connected to it, if we don't feel like we're leading from our heart, if we don't feel like we're connected to the work that we're doing, we start to drain the emotional energy out, and the quality of our life and our thoughts begin to fail, right? We don't have that sharpness of being able to be healthy emotionally and walk through our lives. We struggle with making decisions. We struggle with our confidence. It's just kind of this perpetual breakdown of the way that we operate. And ultimately, when we lose that emotional connectivity, we take too much energy out of our emotions, it starts to change us mentally, right? It starts to change our ability to focus in on a problem. It starts to alter the way that we engage our mind, and I'll share a personal example with this, right? So, I considered myself, right, not a diet person, right? Like I'm not somebody that's a diet person. I still consider myself not a gym person, right? Like I don't enjoy just going to the gym and pumping lead or whatever, right? That's just not what I'm made out of, right? But I had allowed my emotional quality of not feeling connected to wanting to be better, wanting to engage my body through time, really convince myself that I am incapable of the improvement. I'm incapable of getting better, and unfortunately, right, we can have a lot of influences in our lives that can cause this. It can be friends and family, it can be coworkers, it can be people that you report into, it could be the culture that you work in, right? These can drain that energy away from us and cause us to lose that mental agility to keep our focus. And when we lose the ability to focus, we lose the ability to stay on track with what's important to us. And when we get off track, we lose our spirituality, right? This is our force, right? This is the driving force. This is the thing when somebody's asking you, what do you live for? What's the most important thing in your life, right? And you go, oh, well, it's this or that. Right? Like thinking beyond that. This is the thought process of, why am I here? What am I intended to do, right? This is a critical concept, and it has to be at the top of the pyramid. It has to be, right? Because all of these other things, these other levels of energy, they have to be in balance. They have to be okay, or we can't know why, right? We can't know why if our physical body isn't ready to go on that journey. There's no energy. We can't get up and go after why, right? If our body and our emotions are out of sync, and we can't control where we're feeling things and why we're feeling things, we can't ultimately pursue our purpose. It's just not there, right? And then worst of all, right, if we convince ourselves that we aren't important enough to know or be of use or have a mission in life, if we go there with our minds, it's a really sad state, because we lose all of the energy out of the driving force in life, right? Our why, our spirituality, our engagement of that inner most important self, right? The one that supersedes us long after we're gone, right? It's the impact that we have on the world. But if our mind isn't there, we can't possibly approach it. So these are the energy sources that we live and work with. Second is our pressure test, right? I love this slide. It just cracks me up, because I wouldn't want to swim around with that many fish in one pool either. But this guy has a pressure test on his hand, right? He flipper, fin, whatever. He's in a bowl that's overcrowded, right? He doesn't feel like he's there anymore, right? But he has a choice. He can stay there with his peers in the current capacity, trying to fight for his food, or he's going to take a flying leap and he's going to push himself, right? And he's going to try to get himself to a better state. He wants to be able to go up and get food all for himself, right? So this little fish is teaching us that we have to be aware of our current capacity, and then we have to be constantly applying pressure, right? Because it's over time as we apply pressure and we expose ourselves, right, we become better at things. This is so simple, right? This is a concept that happens all the time in our lives, right? The first time we drive a car or ride a bike, yes, pressure's high, we're not very good at it, right? We get better because we continue to expose ourselves, right? This is why we don't wake up in the morning and go and draw a job out of a bag, right? I'm not going to get up tomorrow and be a heart surgeon, right? We have to have time and pressure to make ourselves where we want to be, that desired capacity, what we're capable of. And at the same time, we also have to make sure that there's water over there, right? The desired capacity that we're going for, we have to understand what the limits of our own capacity is, or if we're looking at it from an organizational standpoint, we have to understand what the limits of our organization are, right? We can't do 150%, with a team of 5 people, right? And we have to limit our expectations and focus in on what we can actually do while still applying that slow force over time, right? And when we think about these pressure tests, we don't want to go overboard, especially when we're looking at ourselves in this improvement process. If we push ourselves too much, it is hard to get up and do this again the next day, right? And as I look at my journey and the changes that I decided to make, right, I didn't wake up one morning and go, okay, I'm going to start riding a bike if I'm going anywhere under 3 miles. I'm going to run in the evenings. I'm going to do yoga. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to change to a pescatarian diet. Like that was not the conversation that happened, right? It was, I started very simply applying the pressure of, I'm going to focus 15 to 20 minutes a day, and I'm going to learn to clear my mind and meditate. And I mean meditate in the very loose term, right? I was genuinely practicing, I want to clear my mind of thoughts, right? To see if I was capable of doing that, and grew it from there, and then applied pressure. And at some point, it didn't feel like I was applying pressure. I was never uncomfortable, because I was just putting myself to the next thing that made me go to where I want to be, happier and healthier, more motivated. You can't have a good webinar if it doesn't have a dog in it. So the next webinar you're on, if you get to halfway point and there's no dog in it, just go ahead and disconnect from that. It's no good. So the science of recovery, right? And I think that this picture really speaks a lot to that, right? Taking those moments of downtime for for yourself, right? I had always kind of fantasized about having a week where, I was kind of closed off and could, read and be with my thoughts and kind of work things out, right? And so COVID's provided that, and I can check that off, the things that I'm glad I did and don't feel like I need to do anymore. But this is beyond just big things like that. This is looking at our everyday life. In preparing for this, Euclides shared with us that this is his approach to even hourly work. As a director, he's and a managing partner rather, he's not necessarily always at a client site, right? So he's working in an office environment, strategy and leadership and planning out the future of our organization, right? So he builds into his day periods of high stress and then a short period of recovery, right? So I work intensely on a project for an hour, no distractions, no answering text messages, checking Facebook feed, updating Twitter, whatever the case is. I focus in, I work on the project, and then I give myself that downtime, step away, right? I go get a cup of tea, I stretch, maybe take a lap around the house or the office, a 10-minute kind of reset of my mind, get my body flowing again, make sure I get my mental focus back, and then come back. What we look at with this, right, is the ability for us to deal with stress and not have this prolonged exposure to stress, and then we crash, right? And then we have to have a week of downtime. I just got to get to vacation. I'm out of here, right? When we push ourselves that hard, our recovery also draws out. And guess what? We don't recover, quickly. We don't recover quickly, and we don't recover fully because the amount of time it would take to bring yourself back to a safe and healthy state of mind where you have your energy back is far longer than any of us take on vacations or probably get for vacation, right? So we have to build it in these micro segments. Remember, we talked about this at the beginning, right? This isn't a 26 miler, right? This isn't our marathon. This is our sprint from this hour to the next hour. And it's also how we prioritize our day. The things I despise doing, I like to do early in the morning because I have more energy and I can keep that out of my way for the afternoon, because the chances are if we hit noon, 1 o'clock, 2:30, right, the ability to push myself through that drastically decreases, and then it starts to pull more energy out of my day. And so I started in my career in healthcare as a paramedic, and this is one where I would say it's a very natural part of that emergency responder culture, right? It's extremely high stress at moments, right? For most scenes of accidents and things, you're there for maybe 15, 20 minutes, right? 10 minutes if it's really, complicated, or a very critical patient, you try to go as quickly as possible. So very, very high stress. And then culturally, to deal with that day in and day out, you run a 12-hour shift. This might happen 6, 7, 8, more times a night, right? So you find that in those environments, people are very relaxed at the station, right? So there's a lot of laughter and cooking and a lot of jokes, right? And it's built into that culture because that's a survival mechanism that has to be there, right? It has to exist, or the human mind can't deal with that day in and day out. And then last, right? So maybe this is slightly, it seems like an obvious point, but it has to be intentional. We're going to get rid of old habits, right? And we're going to install new habits, right? So it's about focusing on the commitment of that and really getting serious, putting what we call countermeasures in place. When I knew that I wanted to change my nutrition totally, one of the first things that I did was I don't have any junk food in the house, right? Nothing that I can go to and just snack on. I have lots of stuff that's healthy, but I eliminated it. Like there's a 0% chance that I'm going to get up walk over here and eat chips as soon as I'm done with this. I can go and get some lettuce though, or maybe spinach, right? So it's identifying those old habits that are barriers and then just getting them out of your way. So when you look at this all together, right, the motivation and energy that we have when we control it, it gives us our flow to have happiness, to be successful in our mission in life. And it's spiritual, why I live. It's my physical body, how I fuel myself, emotional threat into challenge, and my mental, my focus, having realistic optimism. And all of this kind of comes together and allows us to really control the outcome of where we want to go. And so, you know, it wouldn't be a good webinar if you didn't have things that you could go out and immediately do. So if we focus first on the physical aspect, so very simple things, and it doesn't have to be this, right? Like you can think about this. The purpose is to focus in on nutrition and movement, your rituals, build your routines to simply move more. For instance, you know, the camera looks a little high here. A couple weeks ago, I'm not used to sitting every day because I'm typically at a client site. And so I elevated the desk here because I wanted to stand all day long. So the desk chair is not even anywhere close to me because I wanted to have that mobility. I wanted to stand a little extra something, right? From a nutrition standpoint, not doing the diet thing, right? I think it's scientifically proven, right? We've seen that 100 times at this point, right? It doesn't necessarily work to do fad diets. We have to change the way that we think and eat and interact with food and go to it for, you know, comfort or nutrition. And so for me, you know, it was finding a countermeasure that worked with my style. In my style, it worked out. I used the app Noom, Noom. It was very helpful to me to kind of change the way that I approached eating and you know, being more nutritious. Spiritual, aligning to your inner self, right? That's one of those moments that you have to be quiet to align to your inner self. So you need to allow yourself time to think, right? Your body has to be able to process what's going on, and you have to be able to clear your mind to get things in order, right? And it's when you clear your mind and you're in touch with that spiritual journey and why you're here and what your purpose is, that then you can start to wrap your head around focus and where you want to go with your day and the energy that you have available. What are the things that you want to check off today, and how can you lock them into your mind? And then last, but most important, right, is that emotional piece that we neglect the most often. How do we prioritize joy in our life, right? How do we find those moments of joy that make us happy? What puts a smile on our face? Is it reading a book to our kids at night? Is it taking our dog for a walk? Is it sitting quietly and reading? Is it spending time with yourself or with a loved one, or doing something for the community? You must find something that brings you joy and then make it a priority to interact with it, or it's not going to happen, right? We all have excuses not to do the things that bring us joy. Sure, you can always think of those. But if you eliminate an excuse to do something that brings you joy and happiness, you're going to bring joy and happiness to the others around you in your life, change your emotions. So it's very simple. You start with a current state map. All right. So if anyone's on here that's interacted with us at Kaizen, right, they probably, oh, geez, here we go. No, really, current state. What am I doing right now? Who am I right now? And where am I at? If you cannot be honest with yourself and where you are right now, you can't start a journey to improve, right? Because you're denying the things that exist, right? I had to be willing and ready to say to myself, you know, I am not where I need to be in my mental space, right? I had to be willing to say, I also, you know, am eating pretty terribly and I'm not exercising, right? I am overweight, right? And I could do better, right? You have to be able to acknowledge this inwardly to yourself. Luckily, you know, I have great friends that felt comfortable also talking with them about it, hold some accountability, right? And then we have to know why we're going to go on this journey. What's our purpose? What's our vision? What's our outcome? What do we want to get out of going on this journey? No one set off on the Oregon Trail, right, with no purpose, right? We were going to go to California and we were going to get gold, right? We were going to become rich, right? No one hopped in a wagon and just like, I don't know, I'm just going to ride for, 6 to 8 months and see where I land, right? That there has to be purpose and a vision to what we're doing, or we don't know where to go. We don't know why we're doing this, and it just flutters away. And then our action plan, both for the good and bad. We have to have an action plan for the things that we want to do. They have to be small, 1%, 1% better, 1% better, 1% better. All of a sudden we turn around, right? We're 30% better. It's been a month, but we have to have an action plan and we have to push ourselves. Action plans also mean that we have to keep ourselves accountable for when we don't hit those. You can't go, well, right? That's how we used to live. Like, that's not how we do that anymore. And then to complete our mission, we have to train like an athlete, right? And when I first heard this in this context, I thought, all right, that's a lot to take in. But in reality, it's not, right? Athletes are incredibly specific about how much time they work out, how much energy they put into their day, how much nutrition they take in, what things they take in, right? What proteins they get, what sugars they don't get, how they hydrate, and it shows, right? This is why I was just watching a thing on YouTube, like Mike Tyson at his age is still absolutely terrifying in a boxing ring. He's dedicated a lifestyle of focusing on how he interacts. He's very purposeful. He's aware of where he's at. I'm sure he has a purpose and vision, and he knows what he's going to do to stay in that shape. So your physical energy has to be replenished. Your heart has to be happy, right? Hope, confidence, compassion. Your head, you have to be focused, have clear thinking, realistic optimism. Your spirit has to work on its own. You have to have a passion and commitment and integrity. So this is just an A3, a personal A3 example. There are lots of different ways, but the important part is writing down what you want to do coming away from this, right? So even if you're at home at the kitchen table or wherever you're at right now, just scribble it down on a piece of paper, right? Where are you at right now, right? Where do you want to go? And then what are the barriers? Take an assessment of really where you're at, right? And then start to work on that ritual or plan to move forward. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be pretty. We see teams get stuck on things like this a lot, and people sometimes in their personal lives will get stuck on, I don't want to download the app and get rid of it, right? You can see on the wall behind me, right? I use sticky notes like I have stock in 3M. It works. It's touch and feel and interaction, right? Write it down. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be comprehensible to you, right? And then down here on the bottom right-hand side, see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday over on the very right, habit formation, accountability to yourself, right? If you don't have the integrity to be accountable to yourself, we have to start the whole presentation over again, right? We have to be accountable to something. This allows us to be accountable to ourselves. Say what we're going to do and then do it. So our habits, they're the things that we have to focus on, right? Those simple things that we're gonna change, right? I would focus there first, right? I needed to take some time for myself to align my thoughts. When we can get our habits under control, right? That's when we start to impact more than just ourselves, right? This is where we start to impact our families positively. We start to impact our health, our work, and overall our happiness, right? What you value, that's going to be supported by the rituals that you put in place. And if you can control your habits, right? Write these things down, focus in on it, you're going to have results that just come automatically. At 3 months in, I step on the scale every morning and weigh myself. It's always in a downward trend. Typically on the weekends, I bump up like a pound or two, and then I continue my downward trend right now. And it no longer feels like I'm putting an effort into that. I'm moving through time because I've built these rituals and these habits in place that are supporting the commitment I made to myself. Right? I don't have to think through it. At the same time, I also know when I've strayed off course, right? And I see it in my KPIs. So it pushes me to be better and do better next time. support rituals, they're critical for the success of a change mission. So with that, I hope that this was a positive experience. We are going to pause and do some QA. You're welcome to stay as long as you'd like. You know, I don't have a long drive or anything home this evening, so we'll try to answer any questions that you have. Chuck?
Okay, thanks, Jesse. That was a great presentation. So we'll just give Jesse a couple of moments here to rest after that long talk, and remind you that following the webinar, at some point you will receive an email. In that email, there will be a link to a PDF of the slide presentation, so that you can download that should you wish to share it. You'll also get a link to the YouTube channel where this presentation, as well as the other presentations, webinars that we've done in this series, are recorded and stored. And you'll also receive a link to a survey. That survey, if you return it within 24 hours, will cause a certificate of attendance to be generated and emailed to you. So we'd appreciate it if you would respond to that and let us know where we could improve and what you enjoyed about tonight's presentation. So for our Q&A, Jesse, to begin with, if someone was just really looking at this information for the first time and was wanted to start on a journey of this kind, where would they start? Where would be the place that you would say would be the best sort of area to start in?
Yeah, I would say first of all is really focusing first on are you really serious about where you're at in that moment, and you want to do something different. And then you know, I will share that it was making the decision to start really small. I almost you know, and again, this is not baked into the methodology. I'm sharing from my experience, right? I almost picked something that it was like, you know, like if you fail at this is ridiculous, right? Like, and it really was, in all sincerity, it was, I set my alarm 30 minutes earlier so I would wake up, which I had just been asleep. So again, like really ridiculously easy goal, right? And I wanted to attempt to clear my mind, you know, right as I woke up and try to learn to meditate, and was successful at it. And then after about a week started like, actually like, this might be beneficial. And so maybe I'll do this another time a day. And now I do it somewhere between 3 and 4 times a day, depending on where I am in the availability I have. I don't like set cross-legged in a subway or anything like that. It's not like that, right? It has to be reasonable. And you know, when I was successful at that, I felt like I could do something else. And again, I didn't go out and buy a bike and a treadmill. I you know, made the decision that I wanted to cut out. I think it was something I really like. I think it was chicken wings. I was like, all right, I'm gonna cut those out. They're pretty unhealthy, right? And I just kept kind of picking away at it. That's why not until February did I really like. I was like, okay, now I need to challenge myself because I feel a bit bored. And boy, am I glad I did. I feel really awesome. And I know that's what everybody says on these things, right? But I really genuinely feel like a very different person.
Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah.
So one other question that we've got. So we've got the emotional, we've got the mental, we've got the physical, we've got the spiritual. Which one of those areas is really the toughest to deal with in your opinion?
Yeah, you know, I think that that can vary a lot based on where you are as a human being, right? But you know, I think that the mental piece in today's society, not to be, you know, too on a soapbox here, but if you look around us, you know, and it's regardless of any country you're in, right? We're just inundated with really bad information. Not necessarily, I'm not talking about false information, but just we hear about the worst things happening all the time. And you know, I'm no psychologist, right? But I feel like maybe the human brain is just not really made to be able to see video footage of every bad thing happening everywhere in the world, right, at an hour at a time on a loop, and getting feed updates. And if you look at our day and consider what our brain goes through, if I think of it like a Kaizen consultant, you know, we would walk in and look at this and say, like, well, you're looking at good news on a feed and bad news on a feed, and good news. And we was like, well, we need to level production, right? You never know what's coming. The next time you swipe your thumb, you know, it's you don't know if it's going to be a puppy picture or if it's going to be a terrible disaster that's happened somewhere in the world that you've never heard of until this moment, but now you're sad, right? And so it's taking assessment of things like that, and just understanding that it takes a toll, even if we think we're just scrolling through it or looking at it. Like, our brain always is processing it, so it has an impact on that mental state that we're in. So, you know, I really think that we're in a moment in time that's the hardest to overcome. And I would share that was the most difficult part for me to figure out finally how to control. I was just really tired of feeling bummed out, you know, interacting on social media and things. And so for a while, I just suspended my Facebook account. Now my Facebook account's not on my phone. I turned off all notifications for, like, the news app that's on my phone. So now if I prep myself, I'm going to go and read the news feed. I will go to the news feed, you know, or the news app on my iPhone. I'll read the news, I close it out, but it's not visible. It's not pushing notifications at me. I'm in control of when I go and look at it, and it's at a time I choose. You know, and I know that might sound silly, but I control when I'm going to subject myself to that kind of exposure.
Thanks, Jesse. That's all the questions that we've got right now. So just in case somebody's just finishing typing one in, I'll remind everybody that next week we will have webinars again. On Tuesday, May the 12th, we're going to be holding a webinar on simple problem solving. So if you visit our website, or if you're on our mailing list, you'll get an invitation to that for Tuesday next week. And then on Thursday next week, we are likely holding a webinar on DevOps. That's not finalized yet. So that's all the questions that we have. Once again, I'll remind you, you will receive a survey link. If you fill in the survey and send it back in, you'll get a certificate of attendance for the program. I want to thank Jesse for his time and his skill in presenting this to us this evening. Thanks, Jesse, and thanks to all of you for attending, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.